Hello, I'm Alfonso Pallavicini. I'm the president of European Historic Houses. And I say hello to you from windy Belgium. I hope that you can hear me properly. It's a big pleasure for me to welcome you to the Live Visit 2021 of European Historic Houses. European Historic Houses is the umbrella organization for 24 national historic and heritage houses in Europe. And we represent more than 50,000 heritage houses all over Europe, here in Brussels with the European Commission and the Parliament. After great success we had last year with the live visits, we decided to redo them. And this year we will have a panoply of magnificent houses all over Europe in many countries. You will see 15 houses over the next 4 weeks, always on Saturdays at 3 p.m. Central European time. To all of the houses as well, thank you for taking part. And I hope that most of you will enjoy showing the house and that we will have a lot of visitors like we had last year. If you want to know more about European historic houses, we have a fantastic website, www.europeanhistorichouses.eu, where you will see what we do. And if you are a next-gen member of any of our member organizations, you are now able as well to become a direct next-gen member of our European Association. So welcome again to everybody. Enjoy it, have fun, and I pass over to sunny and warmer Greece. Bye-bye. Where you will see what we do and
Έχεις γυρίσει αυτό? Hi. Πες μου, Ξεκινάω. Hi. Welcome to Antouaniko. Thank you so much. It's really lovely to be in this live visits of the European Historic House Association. We're here on Chios in Kambos in Antouaniko. Antouaniko is a typical mansion of the Kambos area in Chios, where many areas, many estates there are with tangerine and orange plantations. If you come in, we're going to walk through this inner world, which constitutes actually all the Antouaniko, all the Kambos estates. I am Manolis Bournos. I'm an architect, conservation architect, and I'm here on behalf of the owners of the house who didn't make it actually to be here to show you around in their estate. So the very heart actually of every Kambos mansion, as it is also with Antouaniko, is the main yard, one main characteristic and feature of which is the manganos well. You can see here the manganos, which actually gets water from the ground and irrigates through a channel to the cistern that you see over there, an open air cistern. We collect the water there, and via that we irrigate the plantation of the tangerines and oranges. I started with the irrigation actually because the irrigation in the agricultural production are the key element of around which all this world has been built throughout the centuries. Kambos was first developed during the Genoese years in 14th century onwards. From 14th century onwards, there was a heyday period during the Ottoman years, and of course, the third heyday of Kambos was at the end of 19th century. And most of what you see here was of that period, apart from the manganese well, the cistern, and parts of the auxiliary buildings. But let's go upstairs to the main house, where you would go through this the staircase, where everybody should come in, people who stay here and people who visit it. Antouaniko was built by Teteris family. The first owner was Antonios Dimitrios Teteris. Dimitrios Teteris was a rich merchant working in Alexandria in Egypt at the end of 19th century. He built this house, as many other wealthy merchants and trading people from Egypt, Alexandria, and Cairo. They have been building their own houses. Families which have been coming from Chios, they have been building their houses here for their families to come here during the summer, since it was really warm, the weather in Egypt, and they were coming here to stay throughout the summer. If you see, and you can follow the camera, you will see that the pebbled yard is one of the main characteristics of that period, but also from the periods which there were before. And you see here the cistern where the water was collected, the large pergola which covers the manganese well and the cistern, and through which you create a microclimate very, very nice for this area of the world. Let's go now inside to the main house. Antouaniko is a typical house. It's a typical house of Kambos, where the corridor, the central corridor, is really the axis around which you can have the various rooms. Please come in. It's quite simple. There are those foam marble surfaces on the corridor, which is, let's say, the most, it is for everybody who comes in. Here is the office space, and not all the house had office spaces, but this could also have been a bedroom of that period. There are simple decorations in the walls, in the ceiling. All the furniture is of the period, but mostly all the windows and doors have been kept intact in the restoration which was held here about 10 years ago. This is a typical bedroom of Antouaniko and of most houses of that period for Greece and the Mediterranean in general. Many of you will find very similar things, I think, around in their own homes or areas. Let's go in another interesting feature of Antouaniko, which is the living room and the dining area. Those were usually connected, and you see here the salon, as it is called, or living room, and the dining area of Antouaniko. It is, of course, the dining room is very close to the kitchen, which is still used as a kitchen, and where the furniture and the tiles of the floor have been kept and restored as they were in the past, as well as the cooking area all around. And via the kitchen, of course, has an access to another veranda, which is really close to another veranda through which you can have the full view of Antouaniko. This is one of the most of my preferred areas in Antouaniko, because here you can have all the air and also see all this area, the green sea as it is called, which consists of perivoli. Perivoli actually is the Greek word for the estate. This one is one of the largest in Kambos, but it's not the largest. And of course, there are areas on the other side after the buildings that you see that you see here. Most of the buildings are auxiliary buildings, such as the one we're going to visit right now, where there is the oven and the area for washing the clothes at that period. Not anymore, but the oven still works, and from time to time we cook there some bread or other stuff. So this actually also belongs to the period before the end of 19th century. The oven and the area where they used to boil the water is before that period, and you can see that also from the floor, which is actually built, and indicates that this area actually used to be once upon a time an open air area. Then it was covered, and then it was transformed in this washing area. Here on those benches, on those stone benches, they used to wash the dishes, they wash the clothes. Now anymore, they're used for different purposes. Let's go outside at the really most interesting, from my point of view, feature of Antouaniko and of most campus estates here on Chios. You see here on the pebbled yard, there's also this floor of this stone slab floor, under which there is an underground cistern where we collect water, rainwater, from this pipe, which brings the water from all the roof of the building, of the main building. We collect it here, and this way we have water for the whole period. This used to be something really crucial for an area like us in the Eastern Mediterranean, where you cannot have so much rainwater. And actually, the reason for which I started talking about Campos, about the Antouaniko, and I started talking about the agricultural production, is because here you cannot easily find in Greece, you cannot easily find at the south of the southeastern part of the Mediterranean areas which are very fertile, such as this one, and have the water needed in order to irrigate all that. So around all this agriculture, you had this ideal for the warm standards of Greece area, where you had plenty of shadow, plenty of evaporating water, through which you could create a better microclimate for the people living here. And let's go now to see further a bit the irrigation process. There is this very firm limit between the ward for the big part of the family and the part of the estate where people working with the land and the soil and the agriculture should be around. And via this alley, we have the main irrigation channel through which comes the water from the cistern. The cistern, as you will see, it's over there. And there is a system of channels here, which with gravity simply brings out the water. Then the water is poured into this channel, and via this channel, it goes all along the big estate. And from location to location, depending on the needs, you can take off the stops, put them here, and so simply you can have the water running all around. Now, as you might understand, the whole plantation is still kept. Most of those trees are at least of 1 century, and part of the restoration procedure was actually to restore also the irrigation channels and all that stuff. So from Antouaniko and Chios, if you go that way, you go directly to Ballykilcavan, where David is about is going to show us their property. Bye bye from Chios. So nice to meet you.
Gormagad Manolas, August Fulcherov Galer, go Ballykilcavan. You're all very welcome to Ballykilcavan, and thanks very much for joining us and seeing what we have to offer here. So my name is David Walsh, chemist. I'm the owner here, co-owner with my wife Lisa, and it's a little bit of a different tour here because, as you might be able to see behind us, we're not actually in the house. We're down in our craft brewery down in the farmyard. And what I'd like to show you today is to bring you around the 18th century farmyard that we have outside here, and then bring you around the craft brewery as well. And I suppose in a way try to explain why there is a craft brewery here and why we're trying to diversify the farm to try and keep it going for future generations. Just to give you a bit of background on me, I came back here in 2004. I took over from my father when he retired back then. And the reason I did that, I had a nice IT job up in Dublin. But the reason I came back here was because there's been 12 previous generations of the family here at Ballykilcavan. And I really wanted to be a part of that history. I wanted to try and maintain what we had here and bring it forward. And that's, as I say, the reason why I came back from Dublin. When I started farming here, it was the financial reality of farming took over pretty quickly. So we realized relatively soon and relatively early on that we were going to have to do something different and diversify the farm in some way to be able to survive, for it to survive into the future. So I had an interest in brewing. We grew a lot of malting barley here, and we had these old buildings which are not really any use for any modern agricultural purposes. So that's the reason that we decided to create a brewery here, convert this old grain store that's behind me here into a brewery. And it's been on site here since December 2018 and thankfully going very well. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring you outside and show you the farmyard outside. I'll show you the mill house then, the old mill building on the way back in, and then we'll have a quick look around the brewery as well. I have to warn you, it is literally a building site out here because the next stage of the extension to the farm is to put in a visitor centre into this old mill building here. So it was due to be open by now. Unfortunately, I mean, there are obviously a lot more serious consequences of the pandemic, but it does mean that we have had to, kind of curtail the building here for the time being. But what will happen is that hopefully by next month, we'll be able to get going again full steam. There's about maybe another couple of months worth of work here to do. And once that's up and running, then we'll have our visitor centre here ready for visitors whenever we're able to actually bring them back in again. So I'm just going to switch the camera around and I will show you the buildings and the farmyard here. What we have is, this is the first farmyard that's still standing here at Ballykilcavan. So my ancestor came up from County Kilkenny, which is about maybe, in modern day terms, about an hour's drive away from here. He was about a fifth or a sixth son of a famous clan called the Walshes of the Mountains down in Kilkenny. Now, Walshes of the Mountains were a sort of a band of poets and possibly cattle rustlers. They had a bit of a reputation, but Oliver Walsh was the man's name who came up here. He was maybe a third or a fourth son. It's very unlikely that he was going to inherit anything in terms of land down there. So he seems to have got himself a job as a solicitor, which I suppose is marginally more a more pleasant job than stealing other people's cattle. However, he earned his money. He came up here in 1639, bought the land at Ballykilcavan, and then it was passed down through the generations. And about maybe 3 or 4 generations is when this yard was built here. So we think about 1780. Unfortunately, with a lot of things around here, it's a case of that it's old enough that we actually don't have proper records of things really up until about the 1830s, 1840s. But from an architectural point of view, this looks like it's about 1780. So it's about 240 years old at this stage. Very much a mixed farm back then. So when I took over, we went for very much a tillage farm. So we were growing a lot of malting barley and some other crops as well. But this would have been very much a mixed farm and very much powered by horses. It was literal horsepower back in those days. And the building that you can see in front of you now is what was the stable block for the farmyard. And I find it interesting, there's 2 different classes of horses that were used on the farm. So the building in front of you here is the building that was used for the farm horses. They're very much in their tight little stalls. They didn't have a lot of space to move around. And then the far side of that building is actually where where the house horses were kept. So the horses for hunting or for drawing the carriages. And they had much more luxurious stables and much more space to move around. But these were the real workhorses that were kept in here. And right beside it then is it's the milkman's house. So there's, apart from our own house, there are 6 other houses on the farm. So if you got the job as the milkman or the person in charge of the pigs or the steward, you got a house on the farm as well. And I suppose it's probably from their point of view, it's a nice perk of the job. I suspect from the family's point of view, it's an advantage as well, because we know where everyone is, and if someone needs to be roused for a job at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's very easy to find them, and that's one of the advantages, I suppose, for the family to have the houses on the farm. The building beside it then is the dove house. So there's an archway there which brings you out towards the house, and then the red door on top of that is the only access into the dove house. I was only in there for the first time about 5 years ago, because that's the only door. It swings out, so if you're on a ladder, it's a little bit hair raising to try and be leaning back so that the door can come past you. But we redid that roof in about 2013, and we were able then to actually get in there and count the niches that go around the outside of that building. So there's about 200 spaces for birds in there, and they would have flown in and out through the louvered window up at the top. And on top of that, you might just be able to see is the griffin wind vane. So the griffin is the family crest. It's the Walsh family crest. And that's what we've been using in terms of our branding, I suppose, in terms of the beers. We've been trying to tie everything back to the story of the family and the farm, because certainly we found that having a good story is a huge part of trying to sell the beers and trying to differentiate them from everyone else's beers. And that's what we've chosen then as our branding. But the wind vane is up there, and it is a wind vane rather than a compass. So the W for west is actually pointing due east, which does confuse people. But basically, if the wind is coming from the west, the griffin gets pushed round to the W, so you can see which direction the wind is coming from. The rest of the yard then is very much as I say, a mixed farm setup. So there would have been a milking parlour straight ahead of us here. There would have been housing for cattle, for sheep. There's the bull yard, the donkey's yard. There's the place where the fowl were kept, the hens and chickens were kept as well. And it's very much just set up for having animals in over the winter and then bringing them back out onto the farm for over the summer. So I'm going to bring you then into what I have to say is my favorite building. I don't know if you're allowed to have favorite buildings or not on your farm, but this is my favorite building in the on the farm, and it's the mill building. So that's the roof there, which my father restored back in about 1990 or thereabouts, 1995, I think maybe. But this was the powerhouse. Apart from the horses, this is what was used to grind the grain and to run this shaft that basically goes back into what was the grain store, what's now the brewery. That was run by hydropower initially. So there is a channel that runs right underneath the building here. It powers these cogs here. And then, as I say, that drives the shaft, which would have been driving the millstones next door. It looks like there was about 3 generations worth of mechanisms here for driving the mill. So there was a fairly simple water wheel initially. That was replaced in about 1880 by quite a fancy turbine that's down in the bottom of that's still there at the bottom of this mill race at the minute. But then, actually, only maybe 20 or 30 years later, steam engines started to come in. So this wheel was actually put in at a later date, and a belt was run off that, and then that was used to actually power the mill as well. So. I suppose constant innovation in terms of being able to power the mill here, and it's a lovely building. It's over-engineered to my mind for what it actually is, but it's round on the inside, 7-sided on the outside, and this is, as I say, this is where the visitor centre is going to be put in. So at some stage, hopefully in the next, let's say, a couple of months, we'll be able to get visitors in here and allow them to come in, see the brewery, and then come out here to see afterwards. So I'm going to go back into the brewery now. I'm carrying my Wi-Fi with me, which is why I have to lean down every so often. That's the joys of technology. But I'll bring you into the actual brewery building here now. So this is, as I say, this is the converted grain store of the farm. When I took over in 2004, it was really being used just to store, anything that we couldn't find a home for, we tended to bring in here and leave on the floor in here. So it's a building that is a great size for putting something like this brewery into, but really for anything else in terms of modern agriculture, there wasn't a lot of use for it. And that's the reason that we picked here to actually put the brewery in. We've tried to keep as many of the features as possible. So you can see the stone wall here behind me. But actually, if you look up, a lot of the rest of the walls, we did have to plaster, which is really just a food safety thing because it's a food factory. So we have to be able to clean the walls down. But again, it is a listed building. So we had to make sure that everything we did here could be reversed if we needed to reverse it. But we needed to make sure that it was going to stand up to modern standards as well. You can see just above me here is one of the original ventilation slots as well. So we've kept the brickwork separate wherever we could and kept that unplastered. They were angled ventilation slots. And what that meant was that the air could get in to keep the grain cool. But if you were a bird outside, you wouldn't actually be able to see the light coming into the building. So you wouldn't be tempted, hopefully, to fly into it. And rodents the same, that hopefully they'd be kept out as well. But very important to keep the grain cool over the winter and then back into the summer again as it was being used up, just to make sure that nothing bad happened to it. Again, I'm just going to turn the camera around and give you an idea on what the actual brewery itself looks like. This is the actual brewing kit here. So we have 3 copper vessels that we use. They're stainless steel inside, but traditionally they would have been made of copper. So we put the copper finish on them. And these are used for converting the barley, which is malt, into what we call wort, which is just a sweet sugary liquid. And then we bring that across into the fermenters and add the yeast to ferment it. We're using our own barley here. So we have grown malting barley for many years at this stage. And again, it was one of the ideas was to try to diversify what we already had, to try and add value to product that we already had on the farm. So we're using our own malting barley for all the beers. We also have our own well water, it's partly because it's a nice story. It's also partly because we don't have any mains water connection here because we are out in the countryside. So we really didn't have any other choice in that matter. But it is nice to be able to use all our own water, be able to use our own barley to make the beers as well. And we do also grow some hops as well, which we do a special beer every year, which is all our own barley, all our own water, and all our own hops. Everything grown within about 500 meters of the farmyard. The stainless steel then vessels on this side are where the beer actually ferments. So you can see up here, there's a beer vigorously fermenting inside in this fermenter. What happens is that the sugar in the wort gets converted to alcohol and carbon dioxide. The alcohol, obviously, we keep in the beer because that's what makes it beer. But the carbon dioxide we want to let out because otherwise you will literally blow the tank up and nobody wants that. So we have an airlock here. The carbon dioxide bubbles out of here. There's sterilant in there to stop any bugs getting back into the beer, and that's how we create the beers. We then package them. So we are at the minute, because all the pubs are closed, we're putting everything into cans, a certain amount of bottles as well, but cans we found work particularly well at the minute because in terms of people buying beers online, they're much easier to send out. The couriers are much happier to handle them because they're lighter and they're easier to bring out without breaking. So that's how we tend to send the beers out to people. So I hope you've enjoyed that very brief tour of the brewery here. It's as I say, when things open back up again, we'll be back up and running in terms of running tours here as well, because that's an important part. And I think for us as owners of a historic property, it's great to be able to share it with other people. It's great to be able to get people in to show around as well. I would just, before I hand on to Ari, I would just like to say thank you very much to the Historic Houses of Ireland, who've been a great help to us in terms of, more or less any requests or information or anything else that we need. And they have a very diverse range of properties that they need to look out for. And they've always helped us. And it is a great privilege to be able to run somewhere like Ballykilcavan, but it's also, there's a few challenges as well. So it's great for us to have that support as well. And then through them into the European historic houses as well. So I'm afraid I'm not going to attempt to pronounce Ari's castle name, but I will hand over to him, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what's there as well. Thank you very much.
Tervehdys kaikille. Minä olen Ari Kupsus Suomesta, mutta olen asunut täällä Unkarissa jo 22 vuotta ja ollut linnanherrana vuodesta 2012. Jó napot kívánok mindenkinek. Én Ari Kupsus vagyok, finn de itt Magyarországon már majdnem 22 év élek, és 2012 óta itt a Iszkaszangyőri kastélyban. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ari Kupsus. I'm originally from Finland. You had a little taste of the Finnish language at the beginning, but I have been living here in Hungary almost 22 years now. Since 2012, I have been renting the Amadé-Bajzáth-Pappenheim castle, which you can see behind me. And that castle was, of course, taken from the Pappenheim family in 1942 and emptied totally and carried a typical Eastern European history. So after the war, when the family left, the house was used as a movie theater, as a post office, as a police department. There were Polkarmestari Hivatal, which means the local government offices, and also the apartments. And in the little castle that we can see here, the base color, that used to be built up as a castle for the children of the count, and from 1947 that has been hosting now the primary school. The castle was built up by Amadé Count in 1700. The second floor was built up in 1750 by his son, who was a world famous poet. Even in France, in Versailles, they read his poems during the Rococo period. The new part is from 1903, and this is a little castle for 12 rooms built up for the children's purposes. So the children of the count was living over there with the governesses and the private teachers. The children didn't have permission to come to the main building. But let's go inside and I'll show you the castle. The castle has been empty for 35 years, and 2012, when I rented it, it was totally empty and abandoned. Today, altogether, 17 rooms have been renovated and fully furnished to the original style. This is the entry hall. And this was originally made or built up in 1700, and that's why it's decorated with the Baroque furnitures. The same with the garden salon. From the garden salon, of course, we have access to the Baroque garden, which is 5 hectares. It was also very jungle, actually, and after 1947, there were no caretakers anymore for this garden. But luckily, I had good contacts with the Finnish gardening school. In 1913, I received 24 Finnish gardening students with 3 gardening teachers who came here by bus from Finland with their equipment and tools, and they stayed here for 1 month. And with their fantastic help, we could clean this jungle. There is still much to do with the garden, but year by year we are going to make it better and better. Over there, you can see the tower. This is a Cecilia Metella. This was also built up and added to the castle in 1903. And that was originally the morning present from the Pappenheim Count to the newlywed wife, Countess Erzsébet. The Cecilia Metella originally is situated in Via Appia in Rome. That was the place where they had their honeymoon. But let's go inside back and I will show you the main rooms of the castle. staircase upstairs was built up 1750, and it's still original, made out of oak tree. And it was built up by Count Laszlo Amadé, who was this great poet. 1800, the Amadé family sold this castle to Bishop of Veszprém, Baron Bajzáth, who lived here for 2 years. He was already a little bit older and died 1802, and his brother's son, Baron György Bajzáth, inherited this castle. And his descendants were living here until 1944, October the 10th, when the family had to flee Hungary. This room used to be the chapel of the castle. Today it's Biedermeier Salon. So everything is from the Biedermeier period. The colors are from the Biedermeier color palette. And the paintings on the walls are all religious paintings to remind us that this used to be the chapel. Next room has interesting walls. These are original frescoes found 35 years ago. Originally, these frescoes were painted 1750 when this floor was added to the castle. And this is the room I call Rococo Salon or Ludwig XVI Salon. The castle was totally looted in 1945, so nothing what you can see here is original. Everything has been bought within the last 7 years. And here is the main salon. This is 100 square meters. And this is originally the frescoes were painted 1820 by Baron Bajzáth. Of course, these are the copies from Pompeii and Herculaneum. 38 years ago, Hungarian state made the renovation here, and they reconstructed these frescoes in Ampere style. I furnished this room with they are made in St. Petersburg in 1840. The grand piano that you can see here, this used to be Zoltán Kodály's piano, who is one of the world famous composers and music maker in the world, Hungarian. And on the easel, you can see the Pappenheim Countess, Valeria Bajzáth von Pészaki, Baroness. And let's go further. The next room is no. What is the next room? I forgot. Oh, it's a dining room. So the dining room is also interesting because the works started here also 38 years ago, but they were stopped. And at the moment, it's an interesting history on the walls because there are 3 different kind of frescoes. This floor was originally built up, as I mentioned, 1750, when the first Baroque frescoes were painted. After that, 1820, Baron Bajzáth painted Ampere-style frescoes, and 1880, the Pappenheim family painted neo-Rococo frescoes. One day, I hope that we can find out which period we will restore here. Neo-Baroque salon is a historical salon. This is one of the memory rooms of the Finnish embassy. During the Second World War, the Finnish embassy in Budapest was moved to this castle because the Budapest was bombed so badly. And interestingly, Countess Amadé-Bajzáth-Pappenheim, she invited the Finns, and the Finns rented the little palace, the children's palace. This settee was originally made in Vienna, 1780s in Viennese Baroque style, and was brought to the Finnish president Urho Kekkonen in 1960. It has been serving the Finnish embassy in Vienna for 50 years, and all the head of the states, royal families, members of the royal families have been using it. Here is a chair, for example, that Princess Diana was sitting on, and another chair in this armchair. You can see some stains here. Those are left by the King of Sweden when he split the green coffee. Next salon is my study. This is also decorated with the Russian Empire furnitures originally from St. Petersburg, made from mahogany brought from Cuba to Russia, and this book on the table, it's about Egypt. It's a wonderful book decorated with the semi-precious stones and gold. This is the only book what is left from the 3 libraries in the chateau. There were altogether more than 10,000 books in the castle, but unfortunately in 1945 the whole library, or all the 3 libraries, there were books were kicked out from the castle or thrown out from the castle in the courtyard and burned. So this is the only book that we know that is left, that library. Next room is interesting. This is the room that I decorated again as a bedroom. When I moved to the castle, I also met an old lady, Baroness Sibylle von Manteuffel-Soege. She was 18 years old when the family had to flee, and 18 years old. And 2012, Baroness came back at the age of 87. And when she entered the building, I told that, Baroness, let's go upstairs. I have a little surprise for you. And we walked till the end of the corridor. When we got to the last room, which is this room, Baroness stopped and said that, oh, Ari, this was my room. And this is the place, this is the room where I escaped Hungary. And I had to leave all my fortune here, all my clothes and every item, everything that was dear to me. And I never could come back to pick them up. And I told the Baroness that, please, Baroness, please accept my gift. This is, again, your room. I decorated as a bedroom, and I handed it over back to Baroness. Baroness was very touched. She sat down in that chair next to the window and was crying and said that she would have never, ever believed that she can return back home and sleep in her own room. And since that, Baroness is traveling to Iskatsangyör, to Hungary, several times a year. She lives in Italy, near to Lake Como, and is now today 94 years old. So, as you see, the way where we came, this is an enfilade, This is fantastic row of the rooms. In Hungary, we have the longest Antilan. We can connect altogether 9 rooms to each others. So I will show you also the library, the present library, which is of course not as grand as it used to be. Here we have some old books that I have been collecting. Most of them are art books from 1800 and beginning of 1900 and 20s, 2000. And I would like to have more books here, as it used to be a big library here. The staircase, which you can see here, this is made out of red marble, and this was the staircase for the maids and for the children. And then let's go further. There used to be the porcelain chamber. Here used to be the silver chamber. There was so much silver here. We get a lot of silver from Baltic, from Latvia. And the corridor, along the corridor, that is an interesting door here. It's original still. It was built up 1780s, and this is a lift for the food, because this on the opposite side there is a stately dining room. And the kitchen was, of course, on the outside of the chateau, so the smell doesn't come here. So here they lift up the food from the kitchen. And here is one room. This is I call it a blue salon or Napoleon room. This is painted in Napoleon blue, and also decorated with Empire furnitures. The wall researches in every room 4 years ago, and also here you can see next to the window that there are frescoes, and but I'm very curious to see what kind of frescoes we will find, but unfortunately the funding is still, yes, it's still a question. And let's go back. So this aula was decorated also 38 years ago. These frescoes are reconstruction from the original ones. And this, my girlfriend here, Venus Italica, she is originally from Rome, and is the only garden statue that is left here. All the other statues have disappeared somewhere. Venus Italica, she was brought from Rome in 1860. Thank you very much, European Historical Houses, for this wonderful opportunity for me to present my summer home here in Hungary, and to let people know that here in Hungary we have this wonderful, wonderful cultural heritage. But we try to and also fill it with the culture. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Best regards from Hungary.